And this is the other mound, Mound D, that I had mentioned, a big flat platform mound. And it does have a gully cut into it that had been cut into its side, but otherwise it's very intact. And those are just our cars and the landowners' cars. We would drive up to it and work there. First, something about the excavations in Mound D, we actually placed it on the edge of the gully, wanting to disturb as little as possible when we excavated into the mound. We want to get a date from the mound. We want to know something about its construction, how many, what we would call episodes of construction, how fast was it built. It's a very large mound. And try to obtain some material that we can date, that we can radiocarbon date. Not surprisingly, the soil was practically free of artifacts. And looking at it a little bit closer, this excavation is about, well, it is 2 meters by 1 meter, or about 3 feet by 6 feet. And not surprisingly to me, there were very few artifacts, and it looks to have been built very rapidly, perhaps in 2 stages or 2 episodes of mound building where they worked and built up the mound. And this is near the bottom. In fact, this is at the base of the mound where the soil is much darker and where we think we have the subsoil a little bit further than this, but where we think we have the ground surface underneath the mound. And that's, I think, that's the end of the excavation. That would be about 2.1 meters, or about 6 feet deep, to go beneath the mound surface. So we did find some charcoal near the base that we could date, and I'll come back to that in a second. Something really fascinating that we found in all of the small excavation units, and these are these really small excavation units that are just a foot across that we excavated. Something fascinating that we found is this dark soil, which you might call a midden, which in some places really was a midden. That is to say, a soil rich with junk, with trash, with debris, with things that people threw out that they didn't need anymore, like the remains of a meal, bones, pieces of bone, but also ceramic, pottery sherds that were thrown out and placed in this dark soil. And the dark soil is covered up, you'll see, very nicely by all of this lighter colored soil, which has relatively few artifacts, few to no artifacts, which is a relatively more recent deposit, a flood deposits most likely on top of it, sealing it off very nicely from any further destruction. So what we think we have here, if you saw that map again along the bayou, these test units were very widely spaced. What we think we have found is a village area along the bayou where people were actually living. The remains of their village is buried beneath the flood deposits, buried down in here. And the subsoil is visible beneath that. Oops. Some of the ceramics that we found there. We were finding a lot of this Pontchartrain check-stamped pottery, which has this curious sort of check stamping, which is made by a paddle, which is placed on it, which some of the varieties of which date quite early, or Coles Creek. When I saw the mound, I thought, well, this mound must date after about AD 1200. If it's a big platform mound with a building on top of it, that would fit with the Mississippi period, maybe a little bit earlier. However, we're finding this much earlier ceramic. And there is a lot of this ceramic, so there was an earlier village there. However, we're also finding some later ceramics, such as the Plaquemine brushed. And these are only small pottery sherds, parts of whole vessels that have been broken up and discarded. Well, the Plaquemine brushed is, as you might imagine, the name associated with the name of the culture, Plaquemine culture. So some of these Plaquemine brushed sherds that we recovered from the site. We also did some coring. That is to say, we placed a 2-inch diameter core, which was on the back of an ATV, which we got up on top of one of the mounds and placed all the way through that large mound, which when I'd shown you, I didn't think I mentioned, it's about just over 4 meters high. Just over 4 meters high, which is a fairly large mound, or just over 12 feet. And so we placed this as a single core, although it's broken up in pieces. This is a single soil core, and this is the bottom. This is beneath the mound. This is that dark soil, which I can't say is a buried topsoil or a buried A horizon, but is certainly beneath the mound building.